you heard the story of Santa Claus? Once, a guy named Saint Nicholas. How about the tradition of hanging stockings at the fireplace? Well, the true story of Santa Claus begins with a guy named Nicholas. And he was born during the 3rd century on the coast of Turkey. Turkey, in Greece. Hot over there. He was born of a Christian family, a devout Christian family. And unfortunately, his parents died of an epidemic when he was very young. But being raised in the Christian tradition, he took to heart the teaching of Jesus that said, sell everything that you own and take the money and give it to the poor. So he began doing that, and he was sainted later on, and he was known as being this person that gave to children and the needy, and he had a special affinity for sailors and ships. So our bishop, named Nicholas, heard about a very poor family in a little village. And the father was widowed, and his 3 daughters could not get married because he couldn't afford a dowry. It was the days of a dowry, and they couldn't afford that. So our St. Nicholas heard about this, and he snuck over to the house, and one night he dropped a bag of gold down the chimney. And it happened to fall into the stocking of the oldest daughter that was hung by the fireplace to dry. A little bit later, he went back and he dropped another bag of gold, and it fell into the stocking of the next oldest daughter. So there's 2 daughters that can now get married off. Well, the father is just so curious about his good fortune of this wealth flowing to him that he stayed up all night long to see if he could catch who was doing this. And sure enough, he did. He caught St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas begged him, he says, please, please, please don't tell anybody about this. He wanted to stay incognito. But of course, the word got out. And it became then that any time anyone got a mysterious gift, they said it was from St. Nicholas. They said it was from St. Nicholas. But the story then has evolved over time to Santa Claus. And he's moved from Greece or from Turkey over to the North Pole. And he's changed his appearance a little bit from the way he used to look. But we still have the same idea of sneaking around at night, coming through a chimney and leaving little presents under the tree or in the stockings, right? So lots of legends, myths, stories, and tales around this time of year. So many things, so many stories around these long nights that we're experiencing in this winter season. So today we're going to be continuing our series this month, Living as the Light, as we've looked at many of the festivals and traditions and holidays and things that happen during this time of year. And today my talk is Let There Be Light. Let there be light. And you may have heard that quote before. You may or may not know that it came from the Bible, from the book of Genesis, when God said, let there be light, and there was light. And that was the end of the first day of creation. It's like, whoa, okay, I made light and I am done. But it would seem that light is pretty important if that was the first thing that God decided to do. And light is very important to creation of the universe. So it's easy to understand during the season of darkness, as the days get shorter and shorter and the nights get longer and longer, how our ancestors were probably a little bit afraid when they first began to notice this shortening of the days, this shortening of the growing season, because they were so dependent on growing their food for sustenance, and when the days got shorter and the weather got colder and so forth, there wasn't as much food available to them until they began to understand about the rotation of the earth and what it meant as far as the cycles of life. So our winter solstice, of course, is this Friday. It's this Friday. And it's celebrated in cultures around the world and has been for thousands and thousands of years. And it's considered the start of the solar year and includes many, many celebrations of light and the rebirth of the sun. The rebirth of the sun. So I began to look at these traditions and play with some of them this week and delve into them. And it's really about this hope for new life, isn't it? As the days get shorter and we're ending the year and ready to start that cycle, moving back into spring, the return of the sun, the hope of new life and new birth. And we even see that in the story of the Christ child's birth at this time of year, that is the birth of spirit in man, in human form, the return of light into man. And all of these, or not all, a lot of these traditions are wrapped around some of the old pagan traditions that were happening long, long before the 2,000 year ago birth story happened. So we see the story of St. Nicholas, we see the story of stockings. Have you heard of a Yule log? Have you heard of a Yule log? Well, it was funny, when I was looking for photographs to put in the slide for a Yule log, I kept coming up with the chocolate cake. Have you seen that? I mean, that's what our tradition has evolved to now, is a chocolate cake that we put on the table that gives a nod to the Yule log. But really, the Yule log was a big deal. And there were some rules around that. One was that it had to come from your own land, or it had to be gifted to you. You couldn't go buy the Yule log. That was an interesting piece of the tradition. Another part of it is that you had to light it with a piece of last year's log. So you saved a piece of last year's log to be able to light this year's log with it. Also then, at the end of the season, you would save the ashes and mix those in with seeds and then use those on the field before you plant it in the spring. Again, the idea of bringing the light forward into the harvest. So the Yule log is a very interesting idea and symbolized the power of the sun. It symbolized the power of the sun. Another tradition that we still see today is the evergreen wreath. The evergreen wreath. And it's a circle, and we hang it on our doors to symbolize the continuity of life and the wheel or cycle of the year. And we see that idea of wheel in many of the Native American traditions as well, don't we? Well, how about a Christmas tree or garlands? A Christmas tree or garlands. Well, that signifies the evergreen, if you will. If you think about wintertime in many other parts of the country, it's not very green, is it? It's kind of brown and gray, white, white, brown, gray, white. Here we're blessed to have lots of greenery that continues in the desert, but in those parts of the country, evergreen Christmas trees is the symbol for the continuation of life. That even though it may be white outside, or it may be gray or desolate or brown or whatever, that there is life. There's still this green that is still alive and well. And it's the promise of spring still coming forth. The promise of spring. And of course, we light our trees, don't we? We put lights on them. Again, trying to balance out that reduction of light on the outside with bringing more light into our world, into our personal worlds. So many of these current day rituals that we still have, how many have a holiday tree in your house? Maybe a wreath on the door, some garlands. Sure, we bring these traditions forward and celebrate the holidays, acknowledging the return of the light, the longer days, and the rebirth of spring. And as an agricultural society, our ancestors, we can see how that made a lot of sense. It was important to them to have these rituals and traditions and celebrations. But are they really relevant for us today? Are they important to us today? Well, spiritually, we have said that light symbolizes the divine light of God that lives within us. And as the season of increased darkness, it offers us this opportunity to look for and seek out the light. Many of us have a tradition of driving around and looking at holiday lights that people have put on their homes. Anybody do that? Yeah, if you've been down Cactus between the 101 and Tatum, there's a lot of brilliant decorations up and down those streets. So that's a lovely place to go and see that light and that illumination. And it's so fun. I know I'm sort of, I'm always attracted, I guess, to it when I'm driving through the night and you're used to the street lamps, you're used to the traffic lights or the cars, and then all of a sudden you see this explosion of colorful holiday lights and snowmen and Santas and whatever else may be there. And there's always a childlike, oh, wow, that happens with that. And part of it's the decor, part of it's the light and the nighttime sky and so forth. It's just a really fun thing to do. But we see lots of light. We see more sparkles in our clothes and glitter falling. And we see lights on trees and lights on houses. But in addition to seeing that light all around us, and even experiencing the light within ourselves and others in our connections, because I know we have a lot more celebrations with friends and family this time of year. For me, as I've looked at this, what is really the meaning of solstice? For me, the meaning of this idea of winter solstice is faith. It's about faith in the return of the light. It's faith in the trust of the order of the universe, that we live in an orderly universe, one that is guided by laws, spiritual laws, universal laws that we can all depend on, that we can have faith that even though Friday's going to be the shortest day of this year, it's going to get lighter and brighter and the days will get longer going forward. The sun will return. We know that. We trust that. Ernest Holmes, who is the author of The Science of Mind and also the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, says in his book, This Thing Called You, learn to exchange fears, doubts, and uncertainties for faith. Faith can make you whole. Faith can convert fear into certainty, poverty into riches, disease into health. Faith can lift you from a valley of despair into a mountain of hope and certainty. He says there is a power which flows out through your words of faith. There's a power that flows out through your words of faith. There's a law of faith which has the power to bring into your life everything you need. And when I was reading this passage, what came up for me that he was really talking about here is the power of prayer. The power of prayer. I've been reading recently Neville Goddard's work. His name had come up half a dozen times in the past couple of months, and I thought, I need to pick up his book. You know, this keeps coming at me. I need to pick up his book. So I found his reader, which has like 10 different books inside of it. And I flipped instinctually to the book called Prayer and the Art of Believing. Prayer and the Art of Believing. And he says that faith and imagination are the two most important components for successful prayer. Imagination and faith are the secrets of creation. Now, we've talked a lot about the importance of our imagination and how important that is to the creative faculty that we have, the creative process that we play in, so to speak, in this life. And if you imagine being in a completely pitch black room, no light whatsoever, can you imagine the light from that place? Can you imagine the light from that place? Maybe, but if there's fear hanging out in some of the dark corners, some of the shadows, it can maybe be difficult to imagine the light when we're surrounded by darkness. And the same is true in our lives, that it can be difficult to imagine the good when we're dealing with the not so good. When we're dealing with a diagnosis, it might be difficult to imagine health. If we're dealing with lack of financial flow, it might be difficult to imagine financial flow in our lives. If we're dealing with loneliness, it might be difficult to imagine the joy of a loving relationship. And this is where faith is required, isn't it? This is where our faith really is required. Faith in the return of light. Faith in our own wholeness. Faith in the givingness of God. Faith that love is all there is. Neville emphasizes what Ernest Holmes taught, which is we must first become that which we seek. And that's almost a cliche, We must first become what we seek. But I really like the way Neville continued to develop that idea a little bit for us. To live as if what we seek is already ours. He suggests that we do it by contemplating every day the joy that would be ours if we have that which we seek. That we live, move, and have our being in the feeling that our wish or our desire is realized. Now imagine that. Again, use your imagination. Imagine that. If it is relationship that you're seeking, imagine in your contemplation, how would I feel? What is the joy that I would feel in that being manifested? If it's financial flow, if it's health, how will I feel when I'm on the other side of this? How would I feel when my body is completely healthy? What is the joy that I'm going to feel in that? And our imagination is the key to unlocking that, to help us to feel that joy, and then to begin to bask in that joy, to sit in, to stay in, to live from that place. And that's what Ernest was trying to explain to us. First become what we seek. First become that place of joy in knowing what that is. Michael Beckwith uses the term, be pulled by a vision. Be pulled into that which we seek to become. Be pulled forward into it. And that is the idea of the joy. When we can get ourselves to feeling the joy that we will feel when we have the new car, the new house, the new relationship, whatever it might be, when we can feel that joy, we know that joy and feeling is the juice and the manifestation of our prayers. So getting ourselves to that. I love when he says that. I love when he says that. But the trick, of course, is consistency, right? I've been asking Santa for years and years and years for consistency in my golf game. That hasn't shown up. And I'm still working on real consistency, even in my prayer work and my focus, because we're all human, aren't we? And it is so easy to get sidetracked. It's so easy to start thinking about a laundry list of to-do items, or to be distracted with something else that's going on, as opposed to staying focused on that which we are trying to manifest. And then we wonder why it doesn't show up. Oh yeah, I wasn't thinking about the joy I'm going to feel when this happens. I was thinking about how much pain I'm in right now. Now I got to get over here and get in the joy again. I got to get in the joy again. Oh, let me tell my story one more time. No, I got to get in the joy again. Right? I've got to get in the joy again. I've got to live from that place. Neville says that prayer is the art of believing what is denied by the senses. Let that sink in. Prayer is the art of believing what is denied by the senses. If I have a sore on my arm, and the medical community is telling me that this sore on my arm needs 2 years to heal, 4 surgeries, and I'm believing that, and I'm seeing, my senses are telling me it's there, my eyesight, my feeling is telling me it's there, my intellect is telling me to listen to them. Prayer is denying the senses. If I am praying for a healing of that, I have to deny my senses, don't I? I have to deny my 5 senses and my belief in the physical of that. I have to step into faith. I have to step into the joy of knowing the clarity of my skin, knowing that is gone, knowing that I am healed, whole, perfect, and complete. I have to deny my senses. That is powerful, isn't it? That is powerful. So we can see how faith plays a large role in successful manifestation. Can we nurture and grow our faith of God, of our use of universal law and these practices of scientific spiritual principles? Can we do that to not only turn to the light, but to be the light? to be the light. You've heard that, if the light's behind you, there's a shadow in front of you. If it's in front of you, the shadow's behind you. But when we are the light, there are no shadows. There are no shadows when we are the light. So it is done unto us as we believe. And isn't this time of year all about believing? Yeah, it's all about believing. Believing that the sun is going to return. Believing in the jolly fat man, the star, all the stories, everything. It's all about believing. And yet Ernest Holmes, our founder, says belief may go no farther than intellectual assent, while faith embodies a trust and confidence. Faith is the fuel of prayer. Faith is the fuel of prayer. So this whole season of light is about faith. It's an ending of a year. It's an ending of a cycle of our planet and in its rotation. And it's a time that we can reflect on where we are. I mean, it seems like, to me anyway, just yesterday we were standing up here in the first part of January talking about the basic ideas of the science of mind. We just had our burning bowl and gotten rid of 2017, and we're jumping into this new year of 2018, and here we are. What do we have? 10 days, 12, 13, 14 days left in this month? Yeah, here we are. What have you learned? What have you accomplished? What worked? What didn't work? It's a time of reflection. So the winter solstice is about faith and the return of the light, faith in ourselves, faith in our fellow humans, and nurturing our faith of God. Ernest Holmes reminds us that the barriers between you and your greater good are not barriers in themselves. They are things of thought. It is because of this that all things are possible to faith. So let's look at some of our practicing the principles this week and looking at light. The first one is connect. And that's connecting and with noticing the symbols of the season. Whether they're in your home, your office, as you're driving around in the shopping mall, whatever that might be, an evergreen wreath. Again, remembering that it is the circle, the cycle of life. The lights representing the return of the sun. Or if there's a Yule log or a fire, if you burn a fire in your fireplace, or you happen to see one someplace where you're out and about, remember the tradition of the Yule log and saving that light and taking it forward into the planting and taking that forward into next year's fire. That tradition, that beautiful, beautiful tradition. Noticing these ancient symbols, we can connect with not only the present and seeing what's there today, but the past and our ancestors, and knowing the traditions continue into the future. Number 2, intend. Intend. The solstice represents the turning of cycles, and again, a turning point in our life as well. And this time of year is when we begin to look inward and see, where do I need to grow spiritually this year? Where do I want to grow spiritually this year? How do I want to expand my life? How do I want to practice deeper in the principles? Is there one particular that I want to practice in? A friend of mine asked me the other day, said, what's your word for 2019? I said, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. And she said that she has, over the past few years, picked one word to describe her intention for the entire year. So I've been playing with that a little bit and trying to come up with one. I haven't come up with it just yet, but I know it's a year of some change. So big change in my life. But we'll see what else evolves from that. So give that some thought. What is your intention? What's your word for 2019? When we're back on the 30th, we'll be doing our burning bowl ceremony. We'll be setting some intentions for 2019. So be giving that some thought in your contemplations. Number 3 is meditate. As I said, our winter solstice here locally in Arizona is Friday at 3:23 p.m. 3:23 p.m. local time. What will you do to celebrate or acknowledge that? It's a movement of the cycle, isn't it? It's a transition. It's a time of, maybe just meditate Maybe do a meditation on the rising or the setting of the sun that day. Or maybe set your timer at 3:23 to just simply lift an affirmation of gratitude for the light, knowing that the light is returning. Imagine if it didn't. Connect, intend, meditate. 3 ways that we can deepen in the light of the season this week in our own activities. So we don't have the intense winter here that the rest of the country has, but there's a quote that I came across to close us out this morning from Thomas Wentworth Higginson. He was an American Unitarian minister, author, abolitionist, and soldier of the late 1800s. And it really spoke to me about the importance of winter. He says, how many lessons of faith and beauty we should lose if there were no winter in our year. I think all living things need a winter season, a season of dormancy, a season of hibernation, going within, reflecting, and planning for the what's next, planning for the spring. So I think it's very true that what we would lose in lessons of faith and beauty if we did not have our winter season. So may the returning sun illuminate your lives this week, all week. So it is. Would you join me in prayer? Just taking a moment in the stillness, in the silence of this room, just to breathe, to acknowledge this beautiful holiday season. How good it is to go within and reflect in recognition that there is only God and nothing else. It is the infinite power and presence of life itself, in, through, and as all. Even when life appears to be hidden, damaged, broken, it is still all God. It is still all good. It is still all there. And I know that all of that good, all of that love, all of that light, joy, and peace is right here now, present in, through, and as me as an expression of it. And as I know that truth of myself, I know it for each one of us here today in this room, knowing that we are all divine expressions of the one source, of God, of life, of spirit. And that we are in this time-space reality, in this moment, together by divine appointment. There are no accidents. We are gathered here today in celebration of the light, in celebration of this turning of our earth planet, in celebration of the return of the sun, in celebration and joy of the season, in recognition of these high holy days. So from this place of light, I speak my word for and about each of us today, knowing that the light in our hearts illuminates our world, illuminates and touches each and every person that we come in contact with this week. And that we look for and experience the light in each other and in all that we meet. For we know what we seek, we find. What we look for, we find. And knowing the light and the peace of this season, we claim and affirm that for our planet and for everyone on it. And I know for anyone that has anything on their heart this day, as they bring that into their awareness, moving to a place of joy in the experience of its healing, whether it's clarity, whether it's some information, whether it's healing, financial, relationship, whatever it might be, that as we move that into our awareness, that we find the joy that we seek and we bask in that in this moment. We bask in the joy. And how grateful I am for knowing that our imagination can bring us to a point of joy, can bring us to a place of realization of the truth of who and what we are. And I'm just so grateful for this manifestation, for this truth, as I release this into the activity of mind, into the action of law, knowing that it is done and it is so. We affirm together by saying, and so it is.